My name is Ryan Snelling, and welcome to my Watch Diary. I am thrilled to be here. I hope you are too, whether you're watching on the YouTube channel or if you're listening to the podcast feed. Thank you so much for being here. I am going to get some housekeeping out of the way because there's a lot of housekeeping. And I want to make sure everybody knows what we're doing here. I've talked a little bit about it across different platforms, but we're going to knock it all out right here, right now. But again, thank you for joining me. I've got my trusty Trenta cold brew here. I've also got my water. It is 10 a.m. on a Friday morning. I'm barely 12 hours and not even 12 hours removed from seeing the Northmen for the very first time. So I'm excited to talk about that with you today. But yes, so what I'm going to be doing today on this episode, it's basically what we're going to start doing from here on out on the Rewatch YouTube channel, but also the Watch Diary podcast feed. So by the way, let's start there. If you're listening to the Watch Diary podcast, as you have for a couple of years now, thank you so much. I have officially launched the YouTube element for the brand, and I've put up 3 videos already. One of them was the podcast that you did get, where I rehash the movie that everybody forgot about, 3 Days to Kill. So that was the first video, but last podcast that I did. So definitely check that out, just so you can say that you did. Give it a thumbs up, and make sure you subscribe to the channel if you have not already. So since then, I put up 2 more videos. I did my new ranking show, Every Movie Ever, where I rank every movie that I've watched this year so far, and I do it live in front of you with my Letterboxd open. It's a lot of fun to do because it just gives me a reason to kind of, walk myself through the year. It's only the first quarter, it was January through March, and it's only April right now, but I got to go down memory lane and think about all the movies that I watched this year, rewatches and first viewings, and it was fun. I don't go through every single little movie because you can follow along on my Letterboxd if you want to actually take the time to look at my ranking, and if you care about it that much, that's awesome. But you can go to my Letterboxd. It's really just a sort of prompt discussion and walk myself through the list. I even worked on the list while on video. I was figuring things out in my head as I went. So definitely check that out if you haven't already. So Every Movie Ever is up right now, the first quarterly report. And then I did the first episode of Never Before Seen, which is simply put, just me talking about a movie I've never seen before. I hope to have guests on there. I did it in the past on other podcasts that I've done, and usually the idea is just that, hey, I finally get a friend of mine to watch the movie that I've been trying to get them to watch, and we have a conversation about it, and vice versa. I want people to come on, whether it's Brando or whoever else, to finally set me down and get me to watch a film that they've been begging me to see. I did go solo, and I did Dog Day Afternoon, which was incredible. Check out the episode, but that movie just instantly became one of my all-time favorites. It's fantastic. And I just kind of go through why I hadn't seen it before, but why I wanted to, and what I thought of, and I didn't even get everything out. That was a really weird video for me, but anyway. That's all up there. Those 2 things are not on the podcast feed. The podcast feed is going to be for the Watch Diary show, which is the big kahuna. It's what you're listening to right now. So here's the plan with Watch Diary. I am going to record Watch Diary as one big thing, and then be able to segment it out into YouTube videos on the channel. So Every Movie Ever, Never Before Seen, rewatch segments, everything that I do, I'm going to segment out on this podcast, and of course create a video for it. That way you guys can just digest that in any way that you want. And it's cool. So that's just going to be new to you. If you are listening to this because you've been listening to Watch Diary for the past few years, you're just going to basically hear me segment things out, which really isn't that big of a deal. But I also have just never done that because it's been super stream of consciousness. But yeah, so I get the housekeeping out of the way. And then if I just talk about whatever I want to talk about, that's going to be called Live Diary. And that's its own. It's not a vlog because I'm still sitting here, but I mean, it's just where I talk about my life. So, here in a minute is the Live Diary segment. And if you're watching on the YouTube channel, you can have that pieced out. I'm also going to be talking about what it was like to watch the Batman at home. That's a rewatch segment. And then I'm going to review the Northmen, which is the thing that you're most comfortable with, because I started this podcast as a movie review podcast. So I'm going to review the Northman, and then we will conclude with an every movie ever, ranking all of Robert Eggers' movies. So yeah, it's just a little bit more segmented, and I'm excited about it. More work for me, but here's the thing about it. And welcome to Live Diary, because I guess this is what this is now. I explained it on the full podcast if you listen or watch the full podcast. So let's start here. So this is the first little Live Diary segment that I'm doing right here, right now. It's the first official episode of Watch Diary as I Want You to Know It. And my fourth video on the YouTube channel. Filming videos this way is really addicting. I didn't account for this really, and I love it. I'm not complaining because I've been waiting years, especially through the pandemic. I've been waiting a long time to feel that spark of energy again when it comes to creating content, because I've been doing this for a while now. I've been doing it on small stages, on big stages, whether it's working with Collider or Schmoes Know. I've been through the ringer when it comes to that, when it comes to the process of creating content and the struggle of wanting to make it while also being an artist and a content creator. And it's just been exhausting for me, and it's been hard to talk about. And frankly, it's been hard to keep going through all of this. And I think these segments, and I think the structure, and I think this YouTube channel, the rebranding, even the designing of the graphics, all the stuff that I know how to do that I haven't done in a while has just reinvigorated me. But also I'm obsessed with the process of this, because when I started YouTube, I had my phone, I would download the video to whatever editing software I had, and I would edit it. And here's the thing about that process. I know how to edit video. I know how to mix and edit audio. I know how to do everything, but I was so caught up in having to get videos out early that my videos never looked good, especially because they were on a phone, but like the lighting was never right. And no matter where I was, if it was my bedroom or whatever, it never looked the way that I wanted to. And I didn't really take the time to invest in it. So I just, I guess I chalked it up to, I'm starting out. This is just what my videos are going to look like. But eventually, as I get bigger and bigger with subscribers, I'm going to be able to get better equipment. And I just never did that. So I went through the YouTube channel right now, because before Rewatch Ryan, it was Sight and Sound. I went through a lot of my old videos, and they look like shit. I'm not even saying that like this looks like a masterpiece, because it doesn't, and I still have a lot of work to do. The lighting is, not the way I want it really, but it looks better than my old videos. I am addicted to this. I am recording straight into my computer with everything that I want. All I have to do is just level out the audio, and I'm done. I have to segment out and edit the videos for whether it's Live Diary, every movie ever, but all the work is happening right now. And it's just never how I'm addicted to this. Every day I woke up thinking, how can I make a video? And there were always reasons to make a video. The Thor Love and Thunder trailer came out. There's a lot of like Ezra Miller news. There was always a reason, I guess, to sit down and record a video. But I just have mixed feelings on how I want to sit down and make videos, I guess. But I wanted to just make one. You know what I mean? I didn't know what I was going to do. I just wanted to turn it on and sit here and record. And it's just been fun. And I haven't felt that way in a long time. So if you're listening to this and you're a content creator, just know that I understand the struggle, because it's really hard, because there are these ideas that like, I'm just going to make YouTube videos, or I'm just going to podcast, and this is going to be my outlet, and I'm going to have an audience. And, you just want it to, it's one of those things that you have to you just never have to give up, or you never get to give up. You know what I mean? Like, if you truly want to go after what you want out of this, you have to be in it for the long haul. And I've been doing it for 8 years, and I don't think I've been doing it nearly to my capability maybe for any of those 8 years, and it's never been how I wanted it. Whether it was my very first podcast with Film Beef or even working with Schmozno and Collider. Like, that was never what it was supposed to be either. And it was just kind of completely out of my control. And that obviously, that's a conversation probably for another live diary that I even debate on going through. But I've been at it for a while, and it's hard to keep it together. Your mind snaps after a while, but at least I've sort of like found this newfound energy, and I'm excited. So I hope you guys are too. The branding and the channel and the podcast, all that stuff has been exciting me, and I hope that you can just feel it. If you are, I don't like to use the word fan, but if you've been following things that I've done, and maybe you felt like I was kind of in neutral and just kind of, coasting through, I hope the newfound energy translates to you, and you can feel it dripping off of me. Let me take a drink of my cold brew. So here's something I want to talk about. Dehydration. Let's talk about hydration for a second. Because, I live in the desert. If you didn't know, I live in Arizona. And right now it's getting hotter. We're thriving out here. It's getting hotter. It's getting drier. We had like a 0% humidity the other day, which I didn't know that existed. It's also possible that it's happened like 100 times since I've lived here, but because I don't pay attention to the weather, I truly don't know that. So it was the one time that I saw that it was a 0% humidity level, and I just thought that was amazing. Because I come from Kentucky, when it like goes well above 100 sometimes in the summer, how humid it is. But dehydration is a weird one. Hydration is a weird one, because I find that my body is wildly inconsistent on the subject. I don't spend a lot of time outside. I have a fairly cushy life. I'm always indoors and air conditioned, and I'm always lotioning myself. I feel like I lotion myself all the time. I've got lotion right here. I've literally done it since we've been on the podcast. I'm constantly applying and reapplying chapstick, constantly spraying nose spray up in my saline spray. What was that? Saline spray up into my nose. And it's just, it's so annoying to have to do it, because it's like one of those things that like you also do things in your daily life that ruin the fact that you just applied lotion or wash your, because you have to wash your hands. So especially when you're at work and I have to constantly wash my hands, it doesn't matter how much I lotion, because I'm constantly just removing the lotion from my hands. Same with chapstick. This one's a little bit more my fault, because when I apply chapstick to my lips, I can't stand for it to be on my mouth when I drink something. But I am constantly drinking something. Right now, on the podcast, I have 2 Trenta drinks. What is this? This is like literally 60 ounces that I'm going to consume while I'm on the podcast. And I don't have any chapstick on right now, so I'm a little crusty. But it's because I don't like chapstick being on the lids, or like my trusty water bottle that I don't have. I don't like chapstick being on the mouth of it. I just don't like the idea of that. And also the idea of swallowing it. I don't know how I feel about that. Like, I don't think it hurts you if you just swallow a little bit of your chapstick. I'm sure it doesn't, but I just don't care for it. So I apply chapstick. Within 5 minutes, I want to go get a drink, and I have to remove it from my mouth again. I'm constantly doing that. Same with saline spray. Just constantly blowing my nose. But I'm congested right now. I don't get sick, but I am congested. I don't know if it's because of part of the season changing, but I'm a little congested, so I'm snorting saline spray and just blowing my nose a lot lately. So my nose is drying out too, and man, it's a struggle. But right now, what I'm experiencing with all this, it's not at all how it's been the past couple of years since I've lived here. It's weird. My body, when I moved here, when I transitioned from a southern climate, a humid climate, it didn't seem to matter that I moved here. And I enjoyed the heat. I enjoy being out in the sun. I just wasn't fazed by it. But for whatever reason, whatever my body's going through right now, it needs to figure it out quick. And you know what I noticed too? When I first moved here, I was drinking heavily. And then I kind of weaned off it a little bit. When I drink one beer at night, and I could have been drinking water or whatever all day, been perfectly fine, perfectly hydrated, normally hydrated. I could drink one beer and my throat, for whatever reason, dries out instantly. It's literally like drinking beer just absorbs all the water in my body. And I'm like when SpongeBob's in Sandy's snow globe and he dries out. Like that's what it feels like. My throat just instantly gets dry. And I don't understand it. And another thing I've noticed too, I've noticed it. Maybe I knew it all along, but I've noticed for the first time that LaCroix doesn't hydrate you. Because there have been times when I drink like 3 LaCroix before bed, and I will wake up in the middle of the night with my mouth just like literally like it's like sandpaper. My throat is sandpaper is what it feels like. Like I didn't have those 3 LaCroix, and I'll go pee in the middle of the night, and it'll be yellow. And I'm just like, what is this then? What is this sorcery? Because this is just supposed to be carbonated water. As far as I know, carbonation doesn't dehydrate you. So what's the deal? Like that water is still in there, right? Why is it not hydrating me? So it's just right now hard to stay hydrated. And I don't get it. It's really weird. Because, I'm comfy. I'm in air conditioning. I'm at work all the time. I'm not outside. Just all this constant maintenance is driving me nuts. It really is. And I don't, like I said, I don't even feel like I have it as bad as some other people do. Like, I'm not going hiking. I'm not those people that you see on the news that get lost and get dehydrated. I don't know. It reminds me of like, it makes me question all of the things that I thought we had put to rest. Growing up, you see things on TV that like, I don't know about you, but I would see things on TV in like multiple shows and like multiple instances where like characters would do certain things, and it was like that was like a habit, like that's something that you do in life, but it wasn't my experience growing up. Like for example, like I feel like I saw 100,000 times on movies and TV shows and sitcoms, whatever, the little boy goes to bed, he wakes up in the middle of the night, or before he goes to bed, the parents offer him a glass of water to put on his nightstand. And I feel like I've seen that done 1,000 times, but that's never what happened to me. I never, not only was offered a glass of water before bed, but I never needed it or woke up in the middle of the night and needed water. Same with a glass of milk. Like the whole like a glass of milk before bed thing that kids do on shows, I have no idea what that is. I saw it 1,000,000 times, but I never desired or needed or was offered milk before bed. But now I'm questioning everything. Maybe I need a glass of water by my bed on my nightstand to stay hydrated in the middle of the night, because apparently I'm just drying out at a rapid rate at any given moment. And I can't monitor myself while I'm asleep for 8 hours, Isn't that funny? I wish I could think of more instances of that where, I don't know, it must have been a normal existence for certain people, or it's like one of those things that's like outdated in movies and TV shows, because I'm starting to realize that kind of stuff too, that content creators or directors or whatever, they're older, so they don't always like get how the world really is right now in terms of like spreading information. It's like the idea that so many problems could be solved in movies if they just like texted the character a question. But you have to be a movie about it, you know what I mean? And you have to like create an action sequence, and you have to create, the fact that people have relationships where they don't communicate, and because otherwise, like I could literally solve any movie plot. If I'm a movie character, I could solve any movie plot by sending one text to another character, and then it's just simply resolved. But you don't have a movie if you do that. So you have to be a movie about it, There's all those like contrivances and things that you have to do. I wish I could think of more though, growing up. Those like things where I'm like, film and TV shows are telling me that this is how it is. So like in the 50s, maybe everybody had a glass of milk by their bed. But it's not how I grew up in the 90s. I don't know. Maybe everyone else did, and that was just me. But yeah. That was Live Diary. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm a little slap happy. That's really all that I have. So let's roast Brando here for a minute. because Brando, I announced that he was my co-host. I love Brando very much. I have more chemistry with him than his own wife. But he's not here. And it's you guys that are missing out. Because me and Brando, we provide a lot of entertainment. We're a great time. We're a great hang. And I can solo. I trained myself on how to solo. I trained myself a long time ago not to depend on people to podcast. And you shouldn't either if you're a content creator. But the thing about Brando is that he, on his own, weeks ago, before I even invited him to be my co-host on this podcast, before this whole thing was even planned out, he texted me, "Why is The Northman going to be the best movie of the year?" He was already on top of The Northman before I was. So when it just so happened, the planets aligned, and I was restarting the podcast, and I asked him to be the co-host, and it just so happened that The Northman was going to be the very first movie that came out this week. So I was like, perfect. He's going to get to do it. Now, Brando was on vacation from work this week, so I will give him the benefit of the doubt. And he was also, I think, driving from Kentucky to Chicago, either like yesterday or today or something like that. Now, you might be immediately thinking, hey, why did you think he was going to podcast with you when he was not only driving to Chicago, but would just be in Chicago? Well, he told me that he would have his equipment. And when I texted him last night, hey, what time should I wake up for our podcast? He left me on red. So I woke up and didn't have a text from him, so I knew that I was just going to have to move on without him. But it's okay. We got plenty to talk about. So the only thing that you guys are going to miss out on is us roasting each other. You know, us body shaming each other. That's something that we're probably going to be doing a lot. Is he my emotional support co-host? Probably 100%. Do I use him as a crutch sometimes? 100%. But it's because he brings me so much joy, and I think he brings you a lot of joy too. So maybe I'm just lashing out, but I really miss him. But I'm hoping he's having a good time on vacation in Chicago or whatever he's doing. So hopefully he's going to be on another episode. Another reason why I really wanted him to be on today is that his first viewing of The Batman went down this week. Because as you all know, I'm assuming, The Batman premiered on HBO Max this week, and he watched it for the very first time at home on HBO Max. And I'm about to talk about The Batman, and I just really wanted his take too. I was really looking forward to that, but maybe we'll get it another time. So anyway, that's why Brando is not here, and hopefully he's here another time. But that's the other thing too, and this will kind of wrap up at this point, and then we'll move on to talking about The Batman. The thing that I told Brando when I started this is that I really just want it to be about, I really want him to be a part of this only if he wants to be a part of it, because the collaborations and the partnerships that I've had in the past, a lot of them have been great, especially with like Jay and a few other people. But at the same time, sorry, my nose is drying out at a rapid rate. But at the same time, you know, I learned how to do things on my own, and I was getting to the point where I was making excuses that I couldn't do things or I wouldn't do things because I didn't have a co-host. I do prefer to have a co-host, but I realized that it was just an excuse, and so I just kind of I knew that I needed to kind of just, you know, figure it out on my own. So that's okay. He doesn't have to be here every time. Maybe he'll never show up. Maybe I'll just constantly be talking about the fact that I asked him to be my co-host, but he won't. All right, guys. As you know, The Batman arrived on HBO Max this past week, and I was so excited. I don't even want to get into the debate of, like, should they have put it on HBO Max? Because, it was like a week earlier than initially intended. But also, in general, the decision to do it while it's still in theaters, you know, I don't really want to go into all of that, because I just feel like we still don't know these things. You know, we can have an opinion on, putting it on HBO Max, you're basically just siphoning money that you could have earned at the box office. I don't know that that's true. It might have been true if you did that 5-10 years ago, certainly. But I just, the box office receipts, the gross, it's slowing down. Like, even before this week, I was kind of questioning whether it would make $1 billion. It doesn't have to make $1 billion. I wanted it to make $1 billion because it would have been sick. And it's obviously, you know, one of my, the Batman is like one of my favorite things of all time. And so obviously wanted to do really well, but like right now worldwide, and again, it's Friday, 750, and I feel like 2 weeks ago it barely crossed 700. So it's not, you know, just raking in the money anymore. And we have Sonic 2 competing with it, and we have like a lot of smaller movies that are probably, you know, like I just feel like the money for it for the most part is done. So I feel like I can comfortably say that the HBO Max release isn't really going to change it that much, but I also think the people that are diehard fans of this are still going to keep going into the theater, because what I will say now that I've seen it on HBO Max, and it is my third total time watching the Batman, 2 times in theaters and 1 on at home. The diehard fans are still going to see it, and it isn't the same, but it does give me a different sort of perspective on the movie. But I was really excited to finally watch it again at home, because when I left the theater, the first thing I thought was, how am I going to be able to rewatch it? Am I going to want to see it again in theaters, let alone watch it at home? Because it's such a slow burn, and it's not as long as people have been like saying, because when you actually look at the runtime on HBO Max, it clocks in at like 2:47. And isn't that as long as The Dark Knight Rises? You know, like if you account for credits, it gets up to 3 hours, but the length of the movie in terms of scenes that the Batman is in, it's 2 hours and 47 minutes. So it's really not, it's shorter than Endgame, is it not? So, but it is a slow burn, and it's a different tone and a different vibe, and I get it. And that could make it a little bit harder to rewatch at home. So that was the big question. Right? I ended up loving the second viewing in theaters, and I really enjoyed seeing it from home on HBO Max. So here's what I'll say. 2 big takeaways from my third viewing. First of all, I still love this film. I really, really do. It's one of my easily favorites of the decade. One of my favorite superhero movies of all time. Love it a lot. The one thing that was a little disappointing watching it at home was some of the sound mix. The fight scenes and some of the action in general, not only do they obviously, like in an obvious way, not punch as hard, but some of them kind of just seemed like very quiet compared to what I remember in the theater. And like a lot of just like some of the, you know, loud noises from the sound design, whether it's the car chase scene or some of the hits and some of the punches and stuff, some of them like almost seemed like absent. Like you couldn't even really hear them. And I have a really good sound bar. I have a pretty good setup at home. I have a nice Samsung TV, a Samsung sound bar, and I've never had any complaints watching things from home. But I could tell, just because the theater experience, that's another thing too. It doesn't happen often when the theater experience and the home experience is so back to back the way that it was. So I just noticed it more. It doesn't bother me, but I definitely did notice it, and it was a little disappointing to hear it when he's going to take out the thugs at the train station at the beginning. You know, it didn't punch as hard. It already didn't punch when that trailer came out and we saw that. It's not even a fight scene. It's a beatdown. When we saw that beatdown take place, the sound mix for the trailer is different than for the movie, because it's just obviously like what the trailer company wanted to do, and they make it sound harder. When he's bashing the guy at the end, it literally just sounds like he's beating like heads of lettuce, like chopping heads of lettuce. Like it is like almost grotesque sounding. That's not how the movie sounds. But it even kind of goes, when you watch it at home, a little step further, and it gets a little bit more tepid. So that was a little unfortunate, but it's still a great watch. And it's a movie that another first, it didn't feel like a superhero movie at all when I was watching it at home. And I don't want you to confuse this as like, look, everybody, including myself, has been saying, you watch this, right? And when you watch the trailers, you think, oh, this is the Batman turned Seven. This is the Batman turned David Fincher. This is the Batman turn Martin Scorsese. That's true, but it always started with the Batman meets, or it's the Batman take on. Literally, I'm watching this movie and I like. It just didn't even feel like I was watching a Batman movie at all. It just simply felt like a detective movie. Not Batman's more detective, not Batman meets Fincher. It literally just felt like I was watching a movie that simply wasn't a superhero movie. And I love that. You know, we talk all the time about movies that transcend the genre, that are bigger than the genre that it inhabits. And this does that, but like on another level. It's like it's on God mode when it comes to not being a superhero movie. It's kind of impressive. And another thing I was trying to look out for too is when I left the theater, I couldn't think of like a single obvious visual effects shot. And the only one that I could really come up with was the moment after Bruce pulls out his parachute. So from the time that the parachute catches on that little bridge and as he's tumbling to the street, I can see that it's a digital double. But I don't even think the flying was CGI. Maybe it was because that would have been a stunt guy, not Robert Pattinson. So I'm assuming it probably was, but it doesn't obviously look like a VFX shot. It's just like a striking, like unique POV. But and when I say VFX shot, I mean like CGI. I don't mean like what they do in the volume, because there's a lot of like, I think the volume going on when they're in the garden at the end. When I say garden, I mean the arena, not plants. There's a lot of CGI going on there. I don't think the smoke is digital, but everything in the background is digital. So I was just looking for shots, watching it at home, that were obviously CGI. You know, because it's CGI. It's a lot harder to see or notice when you're watching it in theaters, but stuff really shows poorly when you watch it at home. Shout out to Shang-Chi. I couldn't find anything. It always just looks as raw and natural as intended, and it's pretty amazing, you know. So the rewatchability of it, I think it's just because I'm simply so into the Batman that I really don't have a problem with it at all. If there were some issues with the visual effects, I would have had a bigger problem with that than I do with the fact that some of the sound doesn't hit as hard. So overall, I love the experience. I think it's a win for the Batman fans, and I hope something comes out with Warner Brothers Discovery as to like what they're gonna do moving forward. I do think that they should do it movie to movie, and they don't need to just have like a blanket like, hey, every 45 days after a movie is released, it's on HBO Max. I don't think you have to do that. Just do it movie to movie. That's fine. But I think now was the time to release the Batman, and it sort of continues the hype. And so yeah, I'd like to see some numbers on that eventually, but we'll see if we get some. But anyway, all right, guys, this is why you're here. We're gonna review the Northman. I'm gonna talk about the movie, but I'm not gonna like openly spoil it. So I think it's just gonna work for people who haven't seen it yet, but also people who have seen it. I'm not gonna say anything that's like overly revealing. I just think you can with this movie. So please hang out with me, and then at the end of this, we're gonna rank some Robert Eggers. So anyway, so the Northman was not a movie I was looking out for until that debut trailer, which blew me away and instantly became one of my top 10 most anticipated movies of the year. I love that I didn't have to wait as long. I mean, I think it was 4 months ago that the first trailer came out, and it already felt like I didn't have to wait long. I was so excited that it was already just going to show up on my doorstep, and it wouldn't have to be, you know, summer or fall to see this movie. This movie's really interesting for a lot of reasons, because the trailer, I think, does a great job of making it seem more commercial than it is upon viewing, which isn't a complaint. But I'm very curious to see who goes out to see this movie, because when you watch the trailer, you think it's like 300, but not digital. You know, you think it's like, oh, this is like just a natural 300, a natural looking 300, and it's not. Because don't make the mistake too. The people who are familiar with Robert Eggers. You know, I always knew about the Eggers factor and knew that it was never going to be like that, but it does come across like that in some of the marketing, or like a Revenant, you know, something that still will speak to maybe a more general audience. I would love to see what the Revenant's box office was, by the way, just out of curiosity. Because I think that's where people's minds will instantly go. 532 million worldwide. That's more than I thought. So I think that's where people's minds are going to go. Like the Revenant meets the Northman or something. Or like a Braveheart. And it's not that. And to the initiated, we know that Robert Eggers, what he's going to do is write a movie in a language that we just don't speak or understand. And he's gonna do some weird shit visually, and he's not gonna make it as commercial as we may require or want. So I was, as a fan of Robert Eggers and as someone who appreciates Robert Eggers, I knew better. But the trailer does come across as a commercial film. But the cast is great. That's another thing that's striking. Like, of course you want to see this movie. Ethan Hawke, Alexander Skarsgård, Nicole Kidman. I mean, the cast is awesome. Anya Taylor-Joy, if you're, again, part of the initiated Robert Eggers fandom. Anya Taylor-Joy coming back and hanging out with them. I mean, there's a lot to be excited about here. And it just looked amazing and looked incredible. And I was trying to get people around me into this. Not like you guys. You guys know about this movie. But people that I work with, I was trying to get them involved and curious about this. Didn't work. I do think that this is a movie that's not for everybody, even though it does have universal themes and things that most people, general audiences, do respond to, maybe just not in this packaging. But yeah, The Northman, directed by Robert Eggers, it's his third film, or at least it's the third feature film. And I did rewatch, The Witch and The Lighthouse before this, and at the end of this review, I am going to rank them. I will say, though, real quick, that I love The Witch, not so much The Lighthouse. I know a lot of people love The Lighthouse. Do I understand you? No, I don't. I was hoping that The Northman was more The Witch than The Lighthouse, and not in terms of material, in terms of my thoughts on it. And what I will say, as someone who prefers The Witch, Robert Eggers, I did respond to this movie. I do think that it's probably the most commercial, but it's as commercial as commercial gets with Robert Eggers. So it's the most appealing movie to general audiences in that way, but he doesn't sell out. Robert Eggers is still Robert Eggers with this movie, and he still makes curious choices, and he still leaves me out of things because I don't understand Slavic language and what the hell people are talking about at any given moment, but that's just how my experience has been with his other two movies as well. So I got over it and I figured it out. And another thing too that was specific about this experience, it's the very first time in my life, and I didn't even like realize how this worked exactly. Closed captioning was on in my theater, and I have to assume that there was just someone in the theater that was hearing impaired. But I say that because I didn't know that, I don't know. I don't know if hearing impaired people get that arranged or set up. I didn't know that. But the subtitles were on, and I noticed it when all the trailers were playing. And I was just like, oh, this is just how it's going to be. And it didn't bother me. It was distracting at first because I had never seen the captioning. I'd never seen captioning in the theater before. And it's so much bigger and just so much more distracting. But I eventually got over it in just a couple of minutes. But it honestly did help to see it. If there was any movie that I wanted captioning on, it's a Robert Eggers movie. So it actually worked to my benefit overall, because I do feel like I understood this movie a lot quicker than I understood the other two movies. I feel like The Witch isn't really hard to follow. You just don't know all the nonsense they're speaking. The Lighthouse, I feel like, is very hard to follow because it's not trying to hold your hand visually either, because it's so ridiculous and absurd. But this one, I just think overall was the best experience. I don't know if it's the best movie, but it's the best experience that I had watching Robert Eggers in a theater by far. So let's start with the performances, since I talked about the cast at the gate. Incredible. Every actor, Ethan Hawke, Nicole Kidman, Alexander Skarsgård, Anya Taylor-Joy, specifically. Willem Dafoe's in it. He's not in it nearly as much as I thought he was going to be. All of these actors were on their A game, and they helped immerse you into the story so much. Like, at first, when I saw the trailer, I was worried about Ethan Hawke. I was like, oh, I just see Ethan Hawke. Is he going to bring me into this world? He does. Same with Nicole Kidman. You know, Nicole Kidman, when she does accents, worry about her a little bit, she did a great job. Alexander Skarsgård, though, as Amleth, the point of his character is he's supposed to be animalistic and barbaric. And he does such a great job acting that way, but also appearing that way physically. Because the dude's shoulders and his traps, he is so big and barbaric, and he still has some of that Tarzan going on. And it is so striking. Like, his physical appearance, it's not like the Penguin, where Colin Farrell had to be applied all these prosthetics, and then he sort of lived and breathed the Penguin. No, Alexander Skarsgård changed his actual body and his movements to appear like an animal, and he did a great job. You know, I was really excited to see him in general, but he did fantastic. Everyone is so good in the movie, you know. Even the actors that have to be weird, like Bjork as the, I can't think of what word I want right now. Not a vision, but not oracle. Shaman. Yeah. You know, there's the weird people too. But overall, the acting was incredible in it. And yeah, let's just keep going into that. The immersion. How immersive this feels. That's what you get with Robert Eggers. His passion for just transporting you to a place, it never fails. It doesn't. The movie is gorgeous to look at. You just wish every movie looked like this. You really, really do. It feels like the most expensive thing at any given moment is the camera behind the camera, if that makes sense. Like, everything else, it just seems like they threw it together with sticks and stones, and they had no budget whatsoever, even though it's like $100 million. You feel how tribal this was. And I love that so much. And it just helps transport you there. And it's exactly why movies like this, it's a movie's movie. You know what I mean? And Robert Eggers is a director's director. You know, the fact that he just gets to do this kind of stuff seemingly without compromise. You know, there's like, I guess there was some stuff behind the scenes about whether he had final cut or not, but I didn't get a sense that it wasn't what he wanted. So seemingly he's doing everything that he wants to do. And very few directors get a chance to do things like this, especially when you're not a household name. Because Robert Eggers, he's not a household name. We know him, but my mom doesn't. My younger sister doesn't. So the fact that he's getting to do things like this, it's just fantastic. So baseline, this is a revenge film. And I think everybody can get on board with that. It's very simple. You know, you watch this and you're going to make those Hamlet comparisons. You're going to make the Lion King comparisons. So when you start there, simply put, it's something that we've seen a million times, but crafted in a way where we haven't seen anything like it. And it's just super refreshing. Now, part of what goes into that is, you know, some of the weirdness that doesn't quite translate, because there are still moments that I just don't quite get what the hell we're talking about. Part of that is ignorance, but also I think part of it too is that he could have held our hand a little bit. But also, if he did hold my hand, he's not Robert Eggers. You know, and that's the thing that, like, I don't always respond. In fact, I had a very visceral, hateful reaction watching The Lighthouse in the theater. So I don't always respond to him, but I respect him and I appreciate him. And I feel like I get him, you know? I get him. And so it's kind of hard to hate on this because I just feel like he's operating on another level that I wish other directors did. But there are those moments that either like weird me out or take me out or I don't quite understand. And I just feel like it's always going to be that way, and I've come to accept it. But overall, it's also weird to keep going into that because everything else I feel like is more appealing. Um, it starts out, and the trailers kind of ruin it too, but the whole point is that Amleth is there to seek vengeance for the death of his father, to save his mother, and to kill the guy who killed his father, who ends up being his uncle. I mean, that literally happens in the first 10 minutes. So, avenge his father, save his mother, kill his uncle. And that's just where we are. And the trailers show a lot of the movie, but because I guess I wasn't paying attention, I just felt like Alexander Skarsgård always had the long Tarzan hair, and he doesn't. It's like at the end of the first act, he cuts it, and he has like a short bowl cut almost throughout the rest of the movie. And that struck me because I just felt like it symbolized how much more this movie is than its trailer. Because I'm like, oh, I didn't even realize all these shots where he cut his hair. So when you're following his quest, his transformation, none of it happens the way that you necessarily expect. There's a couple of twists that I really enjoy that really change how I feel about the movie and a lot of the characters in a positive way. One big one in particular, but there's a couple here along the way. Shocking moments, maybe not twists, not like Fight Club twists, but shocking moments, turns, if you will. And for a while too, before one of the big turns, I didn't know how I felt about the movie, but the turn really brought me back around and got me way more involved in the story. I thought maybe we were going a little too long without, making some progress, but it really turned around and made me rethink the whole thing. And I was really appreciative of that. And if you've seen the movie, you know exactly what point I'm talking about. But his quest wasn't as I thought it would be, because I thought based on the trailer that this was going to be a war epic, and it's not. I knew that it would be a revenge thriller, but I also thought it would be a war epic. I thought that there would be battles. There are not. It's a much smaller story in that way. It's much simpler. And so basically what he does is he infiltrates, after all these years he's grown, he infiltrates his uncle's village or clan or whatever you want to call it, and he takes his time. He's a little bit more methodical. He's not just like, even though he's barbaric, he isn't just there to right away just start clubbing and hacking away at everybody. It's a little bit more thought out. And Anya Taylor-Joy gets brought along, and she is fantastic in the movie. A lot of it was it was surprising. And I didn't think that this movie was going to be surprising. I thought I got it. But it kind of just, it kept my interest in a way that I wasn't expecting. I thought I was just going to be wide-eyed and watching people kill each other the whole time. And there's definitely a lot of that too. But it's a little bit more methodical. And of course, you're just mesmerized by the filmmaking. So overall, The Northman is an incredible accomplishment. It really is. I pray to God that people go see this movie. By the way, right now, cinemas are fantastic. The Northman, Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent. You have Everything Everywhere All at Once. You have all of these original films, smaller films that are getting highlighted in theaters right now, and I think that's awesome. Like I love that so much that the two movies I want to go see right now in theaters right this second are two smaller indie films, and hopefully I will today. I'd like to go see another one today. But The Northman, a little bit more expensive. It was almost $100 million. I hope people watch this movie. I really do. And I hope it brings along new Robert Eggers fans. Everybody deserves. I want to know what it does with awards. Technically, it's phenomenal. I'm watching this movie, and there's like one sequence that we keep revisiting throughout that's obviously made digitally. But other than that, it's difficult to find visual effects in this movie. It's difficult to find like stunt work. It just, like I said, seems so sticks and stones, and I loved it. And it's a movie that you 100% need to see in theaters. You just have to know that it's not going to hold your hand. But I mean, if you're part of the initiated with Robert Eggers, then you know that that's going to be the case. So all the baseline stuff is there. It keeps you interested in the story. It gives you a couple of twists along the way. It weirds you out. But overall, I thought this was a really, really well done film. I don't know how I feel about its rewatchability. I don't know that I need to see it, at least before like the year ends. I feel like it's almost too weird. You know what I mean? I might rewatch it when I do another Robert Eggers every movie ranked here in a couple of years when he releases his next film. But it's definitely a movie that I'm going to think about and talk about. It's this year's Dune so far in terms of movies that will stay on my mind, even though some of my emotions will be a little bit mixed on the subject matter. But overall, if you're a movie fan, definitely go see this in theaters. It's definitely worth it, whether you come out of it hating it or loving it or whatever. Let's see what it has on Rotten Tomatoes real quick. Like I said, this is Friday. This is release day. It's 89% on Rotten Tomatoes. And I think I can get there. 77% audience score. I get that. I think audience scores are going to be lower for any Robert Eggers movie. I'm just going to compare it to real quick too. Yeah, makes sense. I'll talk about that here in a minute. But anyway, definitely go see it in theaters. I really, really appreciated it. I think that as time goes on, I'll have to kind of wrestle with a few other things, but it's I'm really glad I watched it. So definitely go check out The Northman. If there's any hesitation whatsoever, get over it. Perfect. All right, let's do every movie ever. Let's rank the 3 Robert Eggers films. That's right. I just got out of The Northman and I rewatched The Lighthouse and The Witch, of course. Now, before I sat down to rewatch these films, I knew The Witch was my favorite. The Lighthouse was my least favorite. I didn't know anything about Robert Eggers when I saw The Witch. I heard the critical acclaim. I went with a buddy of mine to go check out this movie. You know, this was like when A24 was like brand spanking new, and we were like, oh, what's this company doing? And I love that film. It told me, I think, everything I need to know, especially now that I have 3 Robert Eggers films under my belt. It told me everything I need to know about Robert Eggers. And there's just the stuff that stays true across all 3 of these movies. He is obsessed with immersion of different historical time periods and transporting you to different places. And he loves language. And I love that he loves language. It doesn't always translate well to me, and I think most audiences, but I appreciate that he's like that, because I do wish we had more filmmakers that were willing to take these chances and not just holding the audience's hand every chance they get for exposition heavy dialogue or just, you know, being a people pleaser. Robert Eggers, he knows how to make a film, and in that way he probably pleases people, the cinemaholics, but he's not a general audience people pleaser. And I respect that, even though I don't always connect with his movies. So with that said, I knew that I loved The Witch, and I loved my rewatch of The Witch. Now, with The Lighthouse, I actively hated that film watching it in theaters. And I remember in that moment, people were coming out of the movie loving it, freaking out over it. To this day, people, especially now because the Northman's out, people are just going on and on about The Lighthouse. My boy Austin Burke talked about on his review that his wife is the Witch fan and he's the Lighthouse fan, and there's like 2 different segments of Robert Eggers fans, the Witch or the Lighthouse. So I'm definitely team The Witch. But what I will say with my rewatch of The Lighthouse, just because I'm more initiated with Eggers, I appreciated it more. But I still take issue with the fact that just like, I don't know what the point of it is. You know, it's a transportive film. He does what he does, and he does it really well. And the acting is fantastic, and the script is unique. and it's all there, but the narrative is so loose because it's about those characters' mania, and I just don't connect with it as much. I appreciate it more, and if you follow me on Letterboxd, my rewatch, I gave it 3 stars, and that's purely just because I appreciate what he did, but The Lighthouse just doesn't do it for me. I'm sorry. The Witch has a lot more twists, a lot more turns. It's more narratively rich. It's a story that I can follow, but also it churns my stomach in a way that The Lighthouse doesn't. You know, there's a lot of weird for the sake of being weird in The Lighthouse that I don't really appreciate. I don't really appreciate it about any film, but it's I'm fine with it just being the Robert Eggers movie I don't like, you know? So that's sort of my attitude. So my overall consensus going into these movies, Witch fan, Lighthouse fan, that didn't really change. Just the thing that changed the most was I like The Lighthouse more. But the other thing too, he's so fascinated, and it's another reason why I was interested in seeing this revenge tale. Because when you go into the Northman and you know that it's about vengeance, baseline, simply put, that kind of thing, that kind of concept does appeal to people, but it's Robert Eggers, and you know that there's going to be more of it. There's going to be more about human nature. You know, The Witch is so much about desperation and paranoia and guilt, and The Lighthouse is about dread, and it's unsettling, and I knew that all those aspects would be incorporated into the Northmen as well. So the Northmen, as I've sort of decided in my review, is at its baseline is the most appealing of Robert Eggers films, but it also goes Robert Eggers. So depending on where you are in your life or your attitude, that it's one of those movies that like you could easily hate it because you're in a bad mood that day. You know what I mean? But the Northman, I think, is the movie I don't appreciate as much as The Witch, but I did love it. And cinematically, I thought it was transcendent. So let's do a quick every movie ever. And this is going to be an easy one because it's 3 movies. The movie that I'm most connected to with Robert Eggers is The Witch. I think Anya Taylor-Joy just out the gate just blew me away with her performance. And I was so unsettled throughout that entire movie. I do think it's easy to follow. I get it. I'm a little bit more familiar with the paranoia and the witch. I've just seen more stories like that. So for me, it was something I was familiar with, but it also transported me in the way that Robert Eggers intended, and it just showed me something new. It was that new car smell. And I think over time, it's been, 7 years since The Witch came out, I believe? Or at least when it premiered, whatever. Not since I saw it, maybe. But The Witch is just the one I connect to the most. And I think it is, simply put, the most succinct Robert Eggers film. And I love it. It's one of my favorite horror movies. And if I'm going to recommend a movie to anybody, just anybody on the street that's Robert Eggers, it actually will be The Witch. My second favorite Robert Eggers movie, you probably guessed it, it's The Northman. You know, it's that happy medium of too weird, but also too accessible, and it really does work for me. I'm having a hard time rating it. I think I'm going to give it a 4 stars. I'll do it right now. I think I'm going to give it 4 stars on Letterboxd. It really, really worked. And at the start of my review, I said that I was almost guaranteeing a top 10 spot on my list. I think right now I'm not as confident, but it's not because I disliked the movie. I just have no idea how I'm going to feel about it over time. And other movies just might please me a little bit more from here on out. But like, also at the same time, if The Northman makes my top 10, I'm not going to be surprised because my appreciation for it and for the experience and for the filmmaking and everything, it's high up there. You know, and The Northman, it's going to be hard to replicate that specific experience. It might not be hard to please me more with the film, but it's hard to replicate the experience. And that's something that I consider when I go into the rewatchability or when I go into my top 10 list. So it's still perfectly possible that it's there. I'm not nearly as confident as how I'm going to feel about it over time. But I also still recommend people see The Northman, but don't think of it as like an epic gladiator type war epic like I thought it was. You might not have thought that, but some of the weirdness kind of took me out of it. But yeah, anyway. So The Lighthouse is easily my least favorite Robert Eggers film. It just has less of a point, and I don't care about the characters as much, and it's just silly. And like I said, I don't feel this way now, but in the theater, I actively hated it. And I thought upon rewatch that it was going to be one of those things where I completely walked back my original thought and feeling. I genuinely did. I thought the rewatch was going to win me over, and I was going to completely change my mind. And I thought I was finally going to be on board with everybody who's been telling me that it's amazing over the last 3 years. That's not the case. All I did was find a greater appreciation for some of the filmmaking and acting, but that's really it. I don't love this movie, and I don't know. I mean, it's definitely meme worthy. Like there's a lot of stuff that makes me laugh in it, but it's just not an enjoyable watch for me. So The Lighthouse, I think, is easily my least favorite, and I think that's where a lot of people don't connect with me, because like The Lighthouse, it has a 90%, so it has a higher tomato meter than The Northman. Already disagree with that. But in true Robert Eggers fashion, the audience score is going to be lower because it's just harder to connect. Let's finish up with The Witch real quick. I can't remember how well this did. Really? Well, apparently it's really hard to look up The Witch. Oh, here we go. So it's a 90%, and it's a 59 audience score. See, that's crazy. This is the first time I'm viewing this, and I cannot believe... I'm kind of shocked by that. I can't believe that I've missed the mark in terms of how audiences. Just makes no sense. It makes no sense the audiences like The Lighthouse more than The Witch. But it's not like it's the end all be all. I get it, because it's Rotten Tomatoes. But it is a good gauge to look at, just to get a sense of where we are. How much money did The Witch make? Real quick. So the Witch made $40 million worldwide on a $4 million budget. So that's crazy. The Witch was made for $4 million, and I believe The Northman was made for like 90 or 100. So this better be more accessible, you know what I mean? It's not reported, at least on Box Office Mojo, but I'm pretty sure. And it's only made $3 million worldwide, but it's of course opening day right now. So yeah, I'm very surprised that I'm disconnected from audiences on that one, but it's okay. We like what we like, and it's not a problem. So yeah, that is my official ranking of Robert Eggers: The Witch, The Northman, and The Lighthouse. Guys, that does it for Every Movie Everywhere. That does it for my rewatch segment. That does it for my review segment. That does it for Live Diary. That does it for Watch Diary. Yes, I hope that was an epic meal for you. This is what we're going to do. I'm going to iron out the wrinkles. So maybe this wasn't perfect, but I'll figure it out. You got an idea of what I'm doing now. I will have a co-host, and we'll get it done. But I had a great time sitting here doing this. I'm excited to edit. I'm excited to post. And that's what's important. Me. No, thank you guys so much. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you like this. Like I said, I'll iron out some of the wrinkles, but this is just what I want to do now. And I appreciate you joining me along for the ride. If you're listening again on the podcast feed, please go to the link in the YouTube channel, or just find Rewatch Ryan on YouTube, and you will get all of these videos. A lot of the videos, I probably should have put the Never Before Seen episode on the podcast feed. When I put that video out, I was like, no, this is an exclusive for the people that are already coming over. But maybe that wasn't the greatest decision. Maybe I should have put like the first week or two worth of content on the podcast feed. But that's okay. We'll figure it out. I can do what I want. So, but yeah, definitely go to the YouTube channel, and you can get all the videos and stuff too. I'm excited. And if you're here to the YouTube channel and you're brand new to the YouTube channel, but you have no idea who I am, welcome. I'm Rewatch Ryan, and I have a podcast called Watch Diary, so you can get the audio versions of this over there as well. Guys, thank you so much. Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd, @Rewatch Ryan. I'm going to get off here, edit some videos, and then I have to sit at home while I wait for my water heater to get fixed. So I hope you have a great weekend. I'll see you on the next one.